Welcome back to Voices of Introspection, a podcast series presented by Nexus Diaries, your go-to destination for curated content on self-discovery. I'm your host Harini Balachandar, and today we are continuing our conversation with Jaishree, an incredible coach with a wealth of experience in inquiry-based stress reduction method. In part 1, we explored Jaishree's personal journey and the moments that led them into the world of coaching. Now, in part 2, we'll shift gears and dive deeper into Jaishree's coaching practice. We'll explore her unique approach to self discovery and the impactful tools she uses to help clients unlock their full potential. Thank you again for being here, Jaishree. Let's start by hearing about your coaching practice. Can you give me an overview of what you do and how your approach to coaching supports your clients' growth and transformation?
Yeah, sure. So I do offer one-on-one coaching, and I also run workshops as well. So I do both things. So the workshops offer like the education piece where people can learn how to do this for themselves, and it's like a guided introspective process, right? In small groups, no more than like say 10 people at a time online, right? The coaching, so what I do with my coaching, so it's not typical life coaching. So it's different from what maybe the International Coaching Federation offers or moderates, right? This is more, it's inquiry, which is meaning it's questions based. So really, I'm more of a facilitator. I'm really asking a question and holding them in the question. And I'm witnessing them also, right, as they explore the answers for themselves. Um, so I try to impart the skill to do this inquiry on their own in my coaching. I think independence is a lovely thing to have. So I would love for my clients to be independent of me, to be able to do this for themselves. And it's a very simple set of questions, and they were framed by this amazing lady called Byron Katie. So I can't take credit for them, obviously. So it's called the work of Byron Katie, right? And so there are 4 questions, and there's also a set of something called turnarounds that follow these 4 questions. So that is the process in a nutshell. So the first question is it true, right? So where this is applicable is whenever you have a stressful situation, no matter in what context, whether it's at work, it's with your family, with your spouse or romantic partner, it doesn't matter. As long as you are experiencing some sort of emotional upset, then the work can be used there. So initially you may want to just allow this upset to settle, right? And then when you're feeling a little calmer, you might want to think about what is the belief that is fueling this upset within you. So the questions allow us to turn the focus from the external world to the internal world. So our 5 senses and more tend to have us be very external focused. We're looking at the world all the time. And not only are we doing that, we're also constantly evaluating the world, and with good reason, right? It's supposed to help us survive. It's supposed to help us keep us alive. All these judgments, these evaluations that we're constantly making within seconds, right? It helps us to survive. But then there comes a point where it's not life or death, but you're still experiencing the world as if it were life or death. So in those very charged situations is when the work can be very, very helpful and useful. So it's also called inquiry-based stress reduction. That's a more official sounding name for it, but it's more informally called the work of Byron Katie, the work.
That sounds really interesting because, from what I've noticed, many coaches tend to focus on helping people with bigger challenges like landing a job or addressing major life obstacles. But what I'm hearing from you is that your work starts at a more micro level, helping people recognize those moments of stress where something doesn't feel right, but they may not be able to pinpoint what it is. It's that underlying stress that often gets overlooked, but once identified, it can help unravel the bigger picture. So it's fascinating that you focus on addressing these smaller, often unspoken triggers and ultimately contribute to achieving the larger goals people come to coaching for. Is there a client story you can share where you have seen a noticeable transformation? Maybe someone who came to you and you could clearly see how they changed or grew through your work together?
Yes, some of my clients are so kind and generous that they come back to me even after like a year. I've heard back from them with very, very positive shifts that have taken place in their lives. And that is always so rewarding as a coach to hear back after like a year. Or even actually, this one was even more than a year, gap. And they said that they landed the job that they kind of an ideal job for them, because when I worked with them, they were struggling with their workplace issues around like power and those kinds of dynamics, not being seen or validated. And so now they're in an ideal job. And so that's a very external world shift. But I've also heard like internal shifts also from my clients. They're happier, they feel more confident dealing with whatever they're dealing. So one client of mine, I worked with them while there were issues related to postpartum, right? And they got back to me saying, I'm in a much, much better place now. And so, things like that it's just so great to hear back from clients. Yeah.
What's usually the first question they ask you when they first talk to you? Like, how do they even present their challenge to you?
Wow, I never reflected on that so much. How do they present their challenge? Usually it depends on the client. Some clients just want you to really know their story. They just want to get it all out there. And we may even spend an entire session not doing the work at all. We've not even started inquiry. We're just hearing the story. And it's okay. There's no right or wrong in this process. It just takes as long as it takes. So they just want to be heard because maybe they never got to hear themselves, or they don't have people in their lives who are listening to them in a deep way. So they just want to be heard. They want to just get they even narrate the entire life story. They want to get it all out there. Maybe they came for a very specific issue, but then they wanted to say the whole thing, right from even like when they were in their mother's womb. They want to start from there. They want you to know everything. And I think that's so precious, because when somebody wants to share their life story, to me, that's almost to be the recipient of that is such an honor for me. It's a privilege. It's really a privilege to bear witness to that. I just let them say it. But I do also am conscious that I'm a coach. I can't just be a therapist kind of listening to them. Psychotherapists tend to do that more, right? So I'm aware that that's only part of it. I do need to also put on my coach hat. So I sort of slowly start to bring some structure into it. When I start to tease out some of the beliefs, I can start to identify some of the core beliefs that while they're sharing the story, I can pick up on that and then say, oh, it sounds like this is a big thing for you. Shall we look at that in a deeper way? And they might say yes, or they might say, no, I want to look at something else. And so I go where they want to go. Because if there's no willingness on the part of the client, then there's no point. I can't push my agenda. There's no place for that in the work.
That makes sense because I think many clients might not even know what their challenge is, just know something is not right with them or something needs to change, basically. It sounds like you're really patient when listening to your clients' stories and you bring a lot of empathy to your work. It's great to hear that. So, tell me more about the inquiry method. What inspired you to choose that particular approach? And could you share an example of how it's used in practice?
Yeah. The inquiry method, the reason I like it so much is because it allows deeper things to just surface, and all we're doing is just putting the question forth, and then the answer emerges from within the client. So for me, I don't know where the client is going to go. I have no idea. Every time I start a session, I have no clue. I have no clue where it's going to go. It's like I'm embarking on a journey that I don't know where it's going to take me. It's like if familiar with the tarot cards, there is the fool, and he's got like a bag, and he doesn't know where he's going to go. He doesn't know when he starts to explore where he's headed, and that's how I feel. So it's always so exciting. Sometimes I get frustrated and I'm like, oh my God, they're still stuck in story. We call it being stuck in story, like when you're just, narrating the same tape, right? You're stuck in that tape. And you as an external person can see it. But the protagonist, the one who's living that story, doesn't know. It's like the audience, when you look at the movie theater, you're like screaming at the hero and the heroine saying, guys, just sort it out. We can see it, but they can't see it. And it's true for us as well, right? We're each the protagonist of our own story, and we can't see it ourselves when we're caught up in it. So it's exciting. It's exciting because I don't know. And then suddenly there's a twist and a turn, and they have a breakthrough. And I'm amazed each time at what comes up. And each time there is some sort of shift or opening of consciousness or awareness. I'm like, oh wow. To just see that each time is like amazing for me. And I learned so much along the way. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this work. It's only exciting because it's rewarding for me. There's a very selfish motive there. It's like I love it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this, honestly.
So, how does it typically come to a logical end? Like they're done for now, so they're going to maybe take a break, or they're really good with whatever they got out of your session. So, what kind of marks them? Do they just, is it just your number of sessions you offer, or is it mostly to do with how they respond to you that determines when, it's time for them to take this on themselves?
Yeah, it's a very organic process. I do not define the number of sessions. So in traditional life coaching, they might. There is a clear goal. You set expectations with the client. You chart out a map, right? A very clear map. Maybe not super clear, but at least some sort of map. With the work, at least I don't. In my coaching, I don't. Many people, they come and they do just one session. That's it. They don't come back, and I'm okay with it. I'm absolutely okay with that, because you need to trust the person. You need to feel safe. There's all this going on in the background, right? Like you need to trust your coach and to take you there. And for whatever reason, they don't feel ready to do another one or to go deeper. Or they just feel that this doesn't make sense. Maybe they just wanted to try the work and they felt like, oh, this is just doesn't give me anything. And that's okay. I have no judgment on that. But some people might end up doing week after week. For example, I worked with a client on a very regular basis. And right before the breakthrough, or at least in my mind, I felt like they were super close to a breakthrough. We finally came to a place where I realized, oh, we are getting to the very core of things. And I thought, finally, we're there. Like I hit a run, the deepest part of them, the most painful part of them. And that's where the shift can happen as well, because we tend to skirt around it a lot. And then when finally you've gotten to the core of it, I thought, okay, it was a difficult session. And then they didn't come back. They just never came back. And I still think about them. I'm like, will they ever come back? So you don't have any control as a coach. You just don't have any control over how it's going to go. It's not in your hands. So some people come week after week and they feel content and they say, you know what, I want to take a break. And when I feel the need, I'll come back. So I have clients coming back after like a year or even 2 years. They suddenly say, Jaishree, I want to do a session with you. And they may do one and then not come back again. So it's very organic that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it is also very interesting that, when you hit that core, there is obviously something that that person didn't want to learn about themselves. They were very defensive and very, I don't want to accept the fact that this is what it is. So, and I don't want to dig any deep. They could be scared, or they just could be stubborn, or, not accepting that fact. But it is very interesting when we do discover that about ourselves. How do we find the courage to face it, right? Yep. So that's very interesting. I find that fascinating all the time, because when I discover something about myself that I didn't like, and I didn't want to change, because it was a part of me so much, very very well integrated with me. So, but I try to continue to challenge myself. In the next time I exhibit it, I'm very conscious about, oh, this is why it is manifesting this way. So it is a very interesting thought, though. So now, can you share a technique with me on how I can maybe use your inquiry method to get better at coaching myself through that
Yeah.
process, in my everyday life? Is there some example you can kind of give me, or tell me what kind of situation should I be in to start using that method?
Yeah. So you don't need to have like a big upset. It can be the smallest minor irritation also. It's worth looking at, in my opinion. One very common belief that a lot of us have is I'm not good enough, right? We've all had that thought in some context or the other, right? Whether it's education, in the workplace, or with your spouse or whoever, I'm not good enough, right? So you can think about a situation where you believed I'm not good enough, which you're willing to share with us. And usually I ask my clients to paint a picture of that situation. So if I were to just take a photograph, like a snapshot, and freeze that moment in time, what would that image look like? So the time of the day, where were you? Where was the other person, if there's another person involved or other people? That moment when you believed I'm not good enough. So can you think of one and take your time to figure out a situation out that you
I'm
can share
sure I
with us?
felt it. Well, a few years ago, I definitely struggled with this. While I've consciously tried to remind myself that I'm good enough for anything that comes my way, looking back, I realized there's still one situation I didn't fully address: a career progression. For instance, imagine applying for a high level job, one where I don't meet every single requirement in the job description. I might have most of the qualification, but there are some areas where I fall short. And when that happens, I start thinking, I'm not ready for this. It's a form of imposter syndrome that many women experience these days, I'm sure. I felt in myself this doubt, like I'm not worthy of the role, or that I'll be judged for applying without all the experience listed. It's intimidating to pursue something when you don't fully feel prepared. The fear of what it might bring and whether I'm truly worth the opportunity really held me back. It's a tough feeling, imagining myself stepping into a new space without all the experience that I think I should have.
So that's a good situation to work on. And where did you experience it? So it could be when you first learned about this new opportunity where you could sort of level up in your career. Or it could be an email you received in the company when you were looking at it, or it could be when you're at home wondering whether to apply.
Oh gosh, it's been so long. I'm going to say it was probably posted in the internal job site, and I was sitting at my desk probably first thing in the morning or maybe later in the evening. I really don't recollect those specific details.
Yes, you're sitting at your desk and you see this job posting on your company job site, and you're thinking, wow, this sounds so interesting. And I have all this experience in my existing job, and it's going to be completely new, avenue. So, and you have the thought, I'm not good enough. So, is it true that you're not good enough? Before you begin, what we're going to do is, so you're going to, the reason I asked for time of day and where you're sitting and all that is to literally go back in time. So you're time traveling and you're imagining as if it's happening right now, right? So it's happening in the present, but you're actually in the past, right? If that makes sense. So imagine you're back there, you're sitting at your desk, and it's you see this new exciting thing, and you have the thought, I don't know if I can do it. So I'm not good enough. Is that true? And the answer can only be a yes or a no.
The answer would be no, I am good enough. But at that moment, it was more about how others would perceive me if I pursued this opportunity. I started wondering what's my current manager going to think if I was going for something different. Since it was an internal posting, I also wondered, will the new person ever care to look at my application? I felt like I was wasting my time because I didn't have the right experience. Would they be supportive enough to let me explore my interest, given that I knew the company but not necessarily the field of work? All these doubts started creeping in, and it made me feel like I wasn't good enough. I didn't know how to convince either party, my current team or the potential new team, that I was ready for this change.
Yes. So glad you brought that up. So there's something called the three kinds of business that Byron Katie talks about. She says there's only three kinds of business in the world. So my business, your business, and God's business. So my business is my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, anything that I have some level of control or influence over. Your business would be your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. And God's business would be what no one person has any control over. So like the weather, earthquakes or volcanoes or the stock market or traffic jam, stuff that not one person has control over. So when you think about your boss, your existing boss or your future boss, whose business are you in when you wonder what they will think about your decision to apply?
It sounds to me like God's business. But now, if you put it that way, it feels like it's not something I can control.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that true?
Yeah. Or for simplicity's sake, we would say it's their business. What they think about my decision to apply is their business. But you're right, in a larger sense, everything is God's business, right? Though you said no for the first one, normally if you said yes, I would take you to the second question, which is, can you absolutely know that it's true that you're not good enough? So let's just verify again. Can you be 100% sure that you're not good enough for this new position?
I can't be 100% sure, to be honest. For me, I'm personally driven by interest. If something loses my interest, I know it won't sustain me in the long run. So, if I'm genuinely interested in something new, I know I'll put in the effort to make it happen. I can never say with certainty that I'm not good enough. It's really more about how others might perceive it.
Yeah, so you'd be more driven, right? Like if as Joseph Campbell calls it, follow your bliss, right? So yeah. Okay. So we've looked at questions 1 and 2, right? Is it true? And the answer can only be a yes or a no. If it's a yes, you move to question 2, which is, can I absolutely know that it's true? Can I be 100% sure, right? And it can be still yes, you may still believe it. There's no right or wrong here. But make sure it's a clear yes or a no, right? Then we move to question 3. How do you react? What happens when you believe the thought, I'm not good enough? So what emotions come up, or how does it prevent you, or what actions are you unable to take when you're believing I'm not good enough?
I guess we give up. My instant thing would be, yeah, maybe another opportunity will come when I feel more fit to take that on, right? So I just let the time pass and the hope that I will be good enough one day. So I pretty much give up that opportunity. So that would be my instant reaction and response to that. Um, I won't be too disappointed because that was easy, just to give up and move on. So I guess that's what I'm thinking would be my reaction to something like that. I have that kind of thought where are we the one making our life happen or is it all meant to happen?
Yes.
That kind of philosophy sets in. So, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question there, but I guess that would be if I start believing in that belief that I'm not good enough, then whatever I'm pursuing, I give up on that.
And see if you can slow it down a little more. Okay, so you're like, you can close your eyes if you like, if you feel comfortable, and go back to that moment. You're looking at the job posting, and when you think I'm not good enough, what happens at a physical body level? Do you notice a change in the sensations that you're experiencing? Also, any emotion that goes with it. So that's when you start sort of turning the focus inward. See what changes happen in you when you're believing that thought. I'm not good enough.
Strangely, I feel a bit relaxed because I don't have to pursue something that's out of my league.
It's a relief.
It's a relief. Yes, that is what it is. So if I imagine not pursuing it, it's like a deep sigh of relief. I feel like I don't have to worry about rocking the boat too much. I won't be disturbing the people around me or affecting their emotions, especially since it's a career shift. I start thinking about things like how will this impact my family or what's the guarantee that it'll even last if I do land the role. I get caught up in these deeper thoughts and then deciding not to pursue it feels like a weight lifted. My body just kind of relaxes like, okay, I don't have to think about this anymore. But if I really wanted it, I think that excitement would overpower the sense of relaxation. I'd love the adrenaline rush of going after something new, no matter what. But in this particular instance, I think my body's reaction was just a way of accepting that I could still pursue my interest in a different way. Not necessarily through that job, but in other ways that align with my passion, right?
So that's okay. So you wouldn't have even applied if you were believing the thought, right? So let's look at question 4. Who would you be without the thought? Like if you just couldn't believe the thought, how or who would you be? If you couldn't believe I'm not good enough.
I think in that scenario, I'd be the kind of confident person who cares less about others' opinions and just pursues the opportunity without hesitation. I'd bring my authentic self to the table, knowing I'm making this decision for a reason. I wouldn't be too concerned about filling in others' emotional buckets, like worrying that if I apply for this role, my manager would be upset about potentially losing me. I used to let those thoughts hold me back. If I didn't have those limiting beliefs, I'd probably just go for it, knowing I have the confidence to apply and the courage to face any consequence that comes with it. So I'd be someone who's both confident and courageous.
Yes. And how does that feel on a physical level to experience that confidence and in courage? Well, how does that feel in your body at a body level?
I think I'd feel a lot like you did, self assured when you discovered yourself. I'd feel like this is my life and I have control over it. I believe I can make anything happen for myself. Physically, I'd probably carry myself differently, more confidently, I guess. I'd feel content knowing that I can achieve whatever I set my mind to.
So you can see now the shift, right? Like, so when believing the thought, what's the experience there? And then without the thought, what am I like, right? And so you don't need a coach or anybody to influence or sort of, so this is very different from motivation, as you can see. right? Motivation is like you sort of rile yourself up into believing something, which may work. But when you just notice the difference between believing and not believing the thought, it's clear. So that's that old snake versus a rope situation, right? Like once you see that the snake is a rope, you can't go back to seeing it as a snake again. Right? It's so you can, no matter what you do. So once you see your own confidence and power and courage, you will never going back to beating yourself up. You may forget, but then you have the work to bring you back.
So, Jaishree, could you recap the questions we have gone through so far? We have covered a lot, and I think it would be really helpful to summarize them before we continue with our conversation.
So the first question is it true? Is it true? So whatever beliefs I'm attaching to, is it true? So in this case is I'm not good enough, right? So is it true I'm not good enough? And the answer can only be a yes or a no. And if it's a yes, you move to question 2. If it's a no, just move to question 3. So question 2 is, can I absolutely know that it's true? And again, the answer can only be a yes or a no. And it's like, it's just basically giving you a second chance to test out your belief, right? Can I be 100% sure? Have I covered all the bases, and usually it's a no, right? We can't know everything that's going on under the sun. So question 3 is, how do I react? What happens when I believe the thought? So this is where I would examine my emotions, my physical sensations when I attach to that thought. How do I treat other people? How do I treat myself? What am I unable to do with that thought when that thought is in charge? Then the fourth one is, who would I be without the thought? So with the thought, what am I experiencing? And then without the thought, what's my experience like? So who or how would I be, right? And then we come to what's called the turnarounds, which is, so this is what brings the balance in. Because when we're believing a thought, when we're convinced something is true, we fail to notice a lot, right? We fail to look at alternatives. So the turnaround is just an opposite. So I'm not good enough turns around to I am good enough. So, and we look for at least 3 examples that are true for you. So let's look at 3 examples now. How is it true that you are good enough for this new job that you're applying? Can you think of 3 examples?
Yeah, so I'm really driven by interest. If something catches my attention, I'll go above and beyond to learn about it. And I'm a quick learner, so I'll definitely pursue it. Because I am driven by interest, I'll also work harder than usual to make it work. I learn and I work hard, so those 2 qualities really come into play. I think they show that I'm good enough. I may not have experience in a particular role, but I bring a fresh perspective. I see having a new perspective as a valuable thing to offer, especially because I can challenge existing beliefs and say, hey, maybe this could work too. So, those 3 things, being a fast learner, working hard, and bringing new perspectives, are what make me feel good enough for the job.
Yeah, very good examples. And something that occurred to me as you were speaking, how did we learn to walk? How did we learn to eat? How did we learn to drink? How did we learn to do anything, right? It's only by trying and making mistakes, and we try again and we persist and somehow we figure it out. So I suspect we could do anything if we just had a go at it. Eventually we may. So it was just going back to when we were children. How did we learn to do things? And so we were good enough then. We were good enough to learn to walk. We were good enough to learn to talk, to all those things, right? So thank you. So that's it. That's inquiry in a nutshell. There's another turnaround, actually. Let me offer that as well. My thinking is not good enough, or my thoughts about me are not good enough. So, what are some of those thoughts that are keeping you from realizing your own good enoughness? So, can you give me 3 examples? What thoughts are keeping you from realizing you are good enough for the job?
I think the thoughts of not being good enough for the job stem from a fear of upsetting relationship or creating discomfort. For me, it makes me nervous and anxious about how people around me will react to this change. It feels unsettling, and I start to wonder if I should give up because of the external pressure, right? Like disappointing someone else. That's where the not good enough thought comes from. I also worry about failing. What if the new hiring manager doesn't like my work or isn't happy with it? That would bring a sense of disappointment on both sides, the person I'm leaving and the person I'm joining. So, a big thought I have is, what if I fail? What if it affects my self confidence or my self image? I've done really well in my current role and received a lot of positive feedback, but in a new job, even with years of experience, I'd still be starting at a junior level. That thought also adds to my doubts.
So, as you noticed, that once you get into your boss's business, both your current and the future boss, then stop realizing our good enoughness, right? We get into others' business. So, in the work world, we also call these thoughts the underworld, the part of the underworld. So, as you do inquiry, it starts to take you into deeper and deeper parts of your mind. So, these underlying fears of like upsetting the boss and all of that can also be looked at through inquiry. And we have something called a judge your neighbor worksheet. So, where you basically write down all your thoughts about, for example, we can pick your former boss or the current boss rather. So it would go like, I'm scared with my current boss because they will judge me for leaving my current position. And then it teases out a lot more basically. So so both the judge your neighbor worksheet and the inquiry process, the 4 questions and turnarounds can be found on thework.com. And a lot of material is available for free on this website. So the work without hyphens or spaces, just thework.com. You can find the entire process there.
Right, Jaishree. Thank you so much. This has been such an insightful conversation, and I really enjoyed those coaching moments we had. I'm sure our listeners are going to benefit greatly from the deeper and thoughtful questions you asked. I'll definitely check out the website you recommended. It sounds interesting. Once again, thank you for being on the show. I am so grateful for the wisdom you have shared and the time you spent with us today. I hope you enjoyed sharing your thoughts as much as we enjoyed hearing them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very much. I loved some of your questions. They made me reflect on pretty much my entire coaching career. So thank you for that.
That wraps up part 2 of our enlightening conversation with Jaishree. I hope you found as much value in her insights as I did. If you'd like to connect with Jaishree or explore more of her work, be sure to visit her website at theincense.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Voices of Introspection. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to share it with someone who might benefit from Jaishree's wisdom. Stay curious, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next episode.